Well, ladies, we will officially start. It is noon, as I know people are probably on their lunch break, which you should be, and hopefully enjoying something delicious. I'm going to kick us off today. My name is Paige Salveter. I work at the national office, and I am the staff liaison to our NAI RISE committee, which is Respect, Inclusivity, Support, and Education. And this committee has added a subcommittee just for you all, for our senior women leaders. And we are putting these lunch and learns on every month to really share our knowledge that we have so we can better set all of our women up for success in their new positions as the senior women leaders. And I'm going to turn this over to Susan Decker and Kristen Gillette, who will be leading the topic today on creating a positive culture within your athletics program. And we will end about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however much more time we have remaining. We'll open it up to Justin Gregg, who is our new director of officiating, and he's going to talk about ejections and suspensions. Woo! Okay, so ladies, you guys want to take it away?
Sure. Oh,
Sure.
If I know how to advance it here.
Yeah,
There we go.
while Kristen's advancing, I'll introduce myself. Susan Decker. I'm the director of athletics at Baker University. Been at the university starting my 18th year here, but new into the director of athletics position as of August. So I was an associate AD here, so have some experience with that. But as you can see listed there, as many small universities, we do a handful of other jobs besides just what we do as a director of athletics. So Paige, thanks for asking to be part of this today, and hopefully we can share some good information with you. I will say, please ask questions from anybody as we go through. I'll be happy to answer questions as we go as well.
Awesome. And I'm Kristen Gillette. Like Susan, I was in the associate AD role at Mid-America. It had started off as an assistant AD position just in Olathe, Kansas here. And prior to that, I was at the NAI national office. I've been in this role right at a year now at Park University as the athletics director. And just like Susan said, there's just a lot, that we juggle and wear different hats throughout the campus. So happy to be here to share with you today. And Susan and I are excited to help represent the Heart of America Athletic Conference. So I love being in the room with her when we go off to conference meetings or share breakfast with different conference things. So Susan, thanks for asking me to be a part.
Yeah, I do have to share though that I was the women's basketball coach here at Baker. That's how I started here at Baker. So those of you that are coaches on here, I can relate to you also. But Kristen played at another NAI school that she actually competed against us when in her younger years. So she was a heck of a basketball player as well. I said to throw that in there so you guys kind of know how far back we've gone.
Yeah, that's fun. I love it. Well, so when we were asked to present on bringing a positive culture, we wanted to just have some type of definition of culture. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of slice and dice it, but landed on this one that we found that a culture is a way of life for a group of people. The behaviors, beliefs, values, symbols that they accept, a lot of times without even thinking, this is just kind of how they've grown up in them, are passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. So as we approach this, we're really looking at kind of surrounding this type of definition. Being a part of the NAIA and with the Champions of Character program, really like this image in regards to culture and how it builds upon itself and manifests in different ways throughout your department and your university. And so looking at kind of the core, right? The values that your institution has, and then what your athletic department has, and then what your teams have as their own core values. So that really lays the foundation we believe in regards to the culture in which people experience in their time with your athletics department. Rituals, it's really those traditions, right? It's the things that you're going to do year after year. They were here at Park before I got here. I'm wanting to embrace those traditions because that's usually got long-standing history behind that. That is what people remember in part of the culture of the university. Heroes, these are the people that possess the characteristics that are valued and in the culture. So a lot of times these are the people you're honoring with your Hall of Fame. These might be presenters that you're bringing in to help share the message and what you're wanting within your culture and help with that message. And then you get out to the outer layer of the symbols. It's the words, it's the gestures, objects that carry meaning. So when I was at Mid-America Nazarene University, after every touchdown, they're ringing that bell on the sideline, right? That is part of the culture. That's a symbol of that university. And so these can change year after year. It's a lot of times it's what the students are bringing from their own experience from home to the university. It can be what's popular, but there is that connection, something that you want to emphasize within your culture and bring light to. And so that's why that's on the outer piece, and you work your way in. And then ultimately it's through all of this, it's what you carry out day to day, year after year. It's the practices, right? This is, I think, in my opinion, that it's the character that you show during adversity. Sorry, did someone have a question? Okay, so that's how we are looking at really this presentation and specific to bringing a positive culture within your athletics department. So for just to provide some images here in my little time here at Park, 1 year, when I first got here, I asked the coaches, the student athletes, I asked leadership and faculty, what words describe Park University? I've got a positive list of words and I got a negative list of words. Those negatives allow me to try to figure out, okay, what do we need to help change? What can we do in changing that culture, right? And then, but the shirt then is what we gave out to everybody at the beginning of this year to really help identify who we are as a university. And it's hard to see on this, but it has our core values for the university. It had the words that people presented last year when I was asking. It also has them in different languages. It brings in some of the pirate terms, just to play off and have fun. Then we moved into, so those are our values. And then we move into what are some of the traditions. The pep rally has been something that's been really important in bringing all these teams together during the homecoming weekend. And just helping recognize we're all here for each other as we go throughout our seasons. Then that next level, again, is the heroes, right? Who we call it the wall of honor. And so at homecoming, we're recognizing past alums or meritorious service people who have really given to the university and to the athletics department that represent the culture that we want here at Park. And then the symbols is we walk by the wall of honor, going to class, going to the training room, to specific coaches' offices. It's kind of our wall of inspiration, and that's what we've been calling it in my time here. And then I threw in this picture of practices. So Ephraim, he's our men's soccer coach, originally from Ethiopia. He played soccer here. He's coached here over 20 years. And he has been dying to take me to an authentic Ethiopian where you eat with your hands. And we went last week or the week before. And so this is just part of being with our coaches, what's important to them, sharing with our staff and kind of breaking bread together. And that's been really important to me in kicking off my time here at Park. All right, Susan.
All right, the next slide we're going to talk about, we're going to go through each one of these areas and why we feel like they're important for building relationships. So within the department, your campus relationships with your student athletes. Kristen's going to talk a little bit about alumni and fundraising, and then within your community. So Baker University is in a small town, Baldwin City, Kansas, which Kristen's in a smaller community also, but not as small as Baldwin. So if you're in a bigger city, some of this might be a little bit different in terms of how you might approach it. But I'll start with the department relationships. I am big on communication and communication style. So I'm also a big believer in you need to figure out what each of your coaches, for instance, in my role, what is their best way of communicating with you? Is that through emails? Is that through text messages? Is that going to their office in person? So getting to know that with your staff, I think, is really important, because some people, the best way for me to communicate with some of my coaches is through text message. Some of them is not through text message, right? And so making sure that you understand that communication style within your coaches. If you're talking about email, if any of you were at the National Convention for Women Leaders, which was in October, one of the keynote speakers talked about just a simple thing on, if you go back and read your email that you've sent out to your staff, for instance, how do you end that email? And I've been pretty diligent about thinking about that. Instead of, she used the example of, please ask if you have questions. I a lot of times end my emails with that. And instead of that, just being happy to answer any questions that you might have, right? So just that little bit of communication can make a difference in terms of how you're perceived or how your emails are perceived. I'm also, and I'm still working on this, trying to figure out my day-to-day stuff, but getting out of my office and going to see our coaches. There's some weeks that I'm much better at this than others. My goal is always to try to get around to as many within each week as possible. That, again, doesn't always happen. And I'm a big believer also in going to their office. Going over, our offices are split between two buildings. So some of our coaches are right in my hallway, which it's obviously easier to see them than it is across the street. But going out and just talking with the coaches. And sometimes, to be honest, when I go over, we're not even talking about their sport. We might be talking about their family. We might be talking about, what they did on the weekend. I think building those relationships helps to create that positive environment. The other thing that I need to relay to you that I think is also important is, if you are going and you're always going either after a win and you don't always go after a loss, I try to do both, because they need support both ways, right? It's easy to go over after they've won because they're always in a good mood and things are going well. It's harder when they have lost. But I will tell you, our football team has struggled this year, which is not normal for Baker football. And I've gone over to our football coach's office on numerous occasions. And last week when I went over, actually it was 2 weeks ago, I went over and we lost a close one to a top 10 team. And I'm talking to him about things, and he's still really positive. He's got a really young team, but he said, "Susan, you just want to sit down and watch film with me?" And I was like, "Absolutely. Like, I'll sit here and watch film with you." So, we spent a little bit of time just watching film, and I don't know that much about football, but I learned some stuff just sitting with him. And so I think those things are important. Outside activities that you're doing outside of work or your games. I was talking to Kristen about this when we were kind of prepping. I'm fortunate. I have a old house that has an old pool in the backyard. It's nothing fancy by any means, but during the summer months when it gets warm and I have my pool open, we have Wednesday afternoons that we go, and everybody from our department is invited over just to hang out, have some adult beverages, stay as long as you want, come and go. Sometimes we talk about work stuff. Most of the time we don't. It's just get out of the office and have some fun doing that. I had our soccer coaches a couple weeks ago. We ended a soccer game and they invited myself and my staff out to dinner. They were going out to eat in town. And so just doing little things like that, I think is important also. The right fit for your department. You all know what your department values are and what is a good fit at your university. And that's going to be different for all of us. I think there's maybe some key values that all of us want to put forth, but for me at Baker, in a small town, in a small community, not everybody likes that small feeling, right? And so when I'm hiring or talking with people about Baker, I need to make sure that that is going to be a good fit for them. If they live in the small town, is that a good place for them to raise their family, right? So those are just some of the department relations that I kind of written down. Kristen, I don't know if you want to add to any of those before we go to the next slide.
No, that was great.
Okay. Campus relations. I started like I said, I started as the AD here in August, but was really involved as the associate AD with our former AD. And we ended up having to hire 8 new coaches since February of 22. Now it sounds like a lot. I have 17 head coaches total, 25 programs overall, but 8 new coaches in a year is a lot. So I started, when I started in August, I decided that I wanted to do a new program, which I put together with a coach-to-coach mentor program. So what I did was I talked to all of our coaches that were veterans here that had been here for a while. And I just made sure that they would be willing to mentor one of our new coaches. And of course, all of them agreed to do it. So I paired up our new coaches with a coach that had been here for a while. For instance, some of them match up really nicely, like men's and women's basketball. We have a new women's basketball coach this year. I put her with our men's coach who's been here about 8 or 9 years. So that's an easy matchup, right? They're on the same schedule. They're going to be doing the same things. The other thing that I matched up that I tried to do is if we have a head coach that's coaching both men and women's. So like bowling, for instance, we have the same head coach for men's and women's bowling. We have the same head coach for men's and women's golf, who he's new. So I matched them up. I think some of that not only helps them become more familiar with one another, but it also helps them just to be able to ask simple questions that they don't have to always come to me to ask, right? Like, how do I log on to first time to get in my email? Or if I'm turning in an expense report, how do I go about that process? That to me has been pretty successful. I think both sides of that have benefited greatly from that. The faculty first pitch, this was one that our softball team did last year, which got great response. Each of our softball players asked one of their faculty members to come out to a softball game. They were each given a softball, and they all threw the first pitch to start the game, and then they kept the softball as a souvenir for them. So we had, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 faculty members out there for that event, which was really exciting. The next thing, the team mentor program, and I think Kristen's trying to pull this up here. I started this program actually when I was out on the East Coast, and this is on our website. So you guys, if you want to look more into it, feel free to do this. There's the team mentoring program information sheet. That's a live link that actually takes you to the kind of the nuts and bolts of things. But basically what I have done here is I've asked our teams, not everybody has somebody yet, but we're working on that. But I've asked our teams to ask a staff or faculty member to be kind of the team go-to or mentor with their team. So each of the mentors kind of does this a little bit differently, and the coaches ask different things from them. Sometimes there are coaches that travel with our teams. They jump on a bus and they'll travel to a game. Sometimes our coaches have them sit on the bench with them for a game. There's some of our mentors will fix them like snacks to take on the road. But even more importantly, what this has helped with is to bridge the gap between athletics and our faculty. Sometimes we get in silos, with athletics. This to me has really helped bridge that gap, and it's been a positive for us, so that our student population of athletes is about 65%, so it's pretty high over our whole population. So this has just helped bridge that gap a little bit. We have a missed class form on here also that we ask our students to take to their faculty members when they are going to miss class. The other thing that I'm very fortunate with is our faculty athletic representative is very involved when we are having to be gone for games. Our coaches are required to send her a roster of who's going to be gone, and then she is the link to send an email to the rest of our faculty saying women's basketball is leaving at this time on Friday. They're going to be gone from these classes, from like 2:30 on. This is the list of people that are going to be gone. That has been very, very helpful for us as well, for the faculty to know who should be gone and who shouldn't be. So I could go into a lot more detail on that. I don't want to take up too much of our time with that, though. But that kind of just with the campus relationships is that in a nutshell.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. I would just add to that. If you have the opportunity to get on a committee that is outside of athletics, I would encourage you to do that. If you haven't had that opportunity, go to the athletics director and ask for that. And then our next piece in regards to developing these relationships that really help develop a positive culture is the student athlete. And so this just came out today. I was so excited to have the opportunity. We benefit with the national office here in Kansas City. And so anytime we can take the opportunity to raise our hand and say, yes, we want to be a part of this, we want to do that. And I think in helping with that positive culture is putting your student athletes in the limelight, right? Knowing the ones that are going to shine in front of the camera and that know they're that just have different skill sets. And so this came out today, the room, the speaker series, there's 2 episodes on here. I would encourage you to share those with your Association of Student Athletes, your leadership group. One thing with the ASA that I was able to do this year in looking beyond just our appointed leaders that a lot of times either comes from the coaches, was at our all student athlete meeting at the beginning of the year to really set the tone of what our culture is, right? And supporting one another and providing opportunities, making the most of their experiences. Because I think we're all recognizing really quickly that with the transfer portal, even though that's NCAA, a lot of NAIA athletes are like, how do I get in that? And the loyalty is not there. They're not thinking I'm going to be at a place necessarily for 4 years. Do we want them? Yes, all 3 years, 4 years to graduation, but we're not always going to get that. And so we've really taken the approach this year of just making this the best experience in the time in which we have them this year, which hopefully then they want to come back and continue to be a part of. And so at our all student athlete meeting, I had a piece of paper that they could just tear off and basically opt in for leadership opportunities, because we get a lot of them here and we want to put them and connect them with these different opportunities. But if they don't tell me, I don't know. So that's been a big piece for us here at Park in regards to helping the student athlete really make their experience their own. Okay, so that's specific to the student athlete. I am going to jump back here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the fundraising. While I was is everybody seeing the fundraising screen?
You got two screens up again, Kristen, as we talked about earlier.
Gotcha. Let me try this again. Did I get it?
There you go.
Okay, awesome. So while at MNU, great place in regards to their alumni office and advancement and helping to really look at fundraising as friend raising. And so in bringing that experience here to Park, one of the things that I wanted to do is really provide the opportunities for the coaches to put this in their court, right? So in regards to putting money into their fundraising accounts. And so the money that we raise from these different programs goes directly to their sports programs. So season tickets, it's new for us this year, but as teams went out and sold those, whoever bought it could take that money and go directly to that sport program. Who knew there's International Talk Like a Pirate Day, and we took advantage of that. And that was early September to really focus on the funded needs that each team has for the school year. And so again, getting people on board to make the videos, send those out, push it out, and make the asks. And all of that goes right back to that specific sport program. Homecoming is another opportunity that we're really trying to build up. And bringing in alumni back, bringing those heroes back that exemplify just all the great things that Park is and did and continues to do. And then we have the golf tournament. And so all of this is like a huge rush in the fall. Now we can take a little breather. And I learned from Brooke out at Lewis Clark State in regards that she does a women's event that's a flip-flop. And I was like, what is that? How does that work? And as I talked to her more, that event wasn't specifically going to match up here, but we have created this R&R event and this idea of rest and relaxation with your girlfriends to come down to Parkville. And then they're going to learn about our athletic programs here. So all this to say, this, I believe, too, is a big part of the culture in which you have not only from your department, the institution, but as you go out into the community and all the people that have graduated from your institution and keeping them engaged.
So one of my goals or to our department when I started in August was I wanted us as a department to be able to get out into our community more. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a small community here in Baldwin. There's a lot of opportunities for us to interact with the school systems. And so the very first day that our public schools here in Baldwin had classes, I sent our teams out just to welcome them to the first day of class, which was initially was a little bit of a shock, especially to the really young kids. You know, I had men's basketball players at the primary center. So you have kindergartners coming to school for the very first day, and you have these 6'5" guys standing there, and they're a little bit intimidated. But the more they figured out what was going on, it was really, it really went over well. So then we went into just doing High Five Fridays. So right now our teams go out to just 2 of our 4 public schools, mainly because the administrators at the high school and junior high didn't think that an age group would enjoy it as much. And so we're at the primary center and the intermediate center. So the picture on the left is just one of the teams there welcoming the kids to school. We do that every Friday. The trunk or treat is actually a Baldwin City Halloween tradition where they line the downtown streets, and the community can set up in their cars. This is actually our dance team. They've done this every year. They had 3 or 4 different cars that they had lined up, that they were dressed up in Halloween costumes and handing out candy, which was a big hit. The third picture there is our volleyball team. Went out to the high school volleyball varsity game. The game that they went to, the Baldwin High School team was playing for the league championship, and so they just went out and supported them during that event. So these are just a couple of the things that our teams are doing that I think helps tie in to allow our teams to be more involved. The one thing that I didn't put on here that just actually happened last night, we had our women's basketball team started a Big Sister, Little Sister program with the high school girls basketball team. So there were the high school girls and the junior high girls showed up last night. So there were probably 50 of the Baldwin City schools there to support our women's basketball team, which was fabulous. It was really, really fun. So that's just a few of the things that we're doing, try to get out into the community.
Awesome.
Kristen, with the comfortable with the uncomfortable, I think the first part here with the hiring and firing, obviously the hiring part of it, I talked about a little bit in terms of making sure you have the right fit for your university. The hard part of our jobs is, and I don't know that we ever get comfortable with it, but we do have to let people go. The thing that I've learned in the times that I've had to be in these situations is I always look at it as what is best for our student athletes. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, there are times that it's much easier. If a coach has done something like really wrong, that's pretty easy to let somebody go. It's harder when the coach has been doing the things and maybe they're funded well enough, but they're not winning. I haven't had to do that, but I know that has happened at places in the past. But I don't know if you ever get completely comfortable with that. I just think it's something that when I think about having to do that, I always have to keep in mind that I'm doing it for what's best for our institution and for our student athletes. And that's not always the easiest thing because you're affecting somebody's livelihood. But in the end of it is it best for our student athletes moving forward?
Thanks for taking the hard one, Susan. I can laugh at myself, right? And I think this is so important in an area in which we can just take ourselves too seriously. And a lot of times I just have to remind myself this is not brain surgery, right? This really is not life or death in a lot of situations. And so in regards to the culture and being at a place, a lot of times what you're wanting to see is it's going to take time, right? And you have to have patience, and hopefully along the way you're having fun, because that's where you want to be, right? It's a joy to get up and come to work. And a lot of times people can say, oh, this is what a stressful time. But when you're loving it, and again, highlighting what Susan and talking about doing this for the student athletes, it's really a joy. And so take those times to make sure that you just kind of let loose a little bit. This was a picture the other day, our athletic trainer, John Bartholomew, who's been at a couple NAIA schools, walked in, and I mean, he was the Cobra Kai guy to a T. It was hilarious. And I've seen Aaron Sawgraves at Cornerstone going around with his staff and the Halloween outfits. It's just fun. And so you need to make sure we're sharing in those times and that people see us in those moments too. In regards to the room, when the NAI came here and we had the panel, they did get me to do a TikTok video. I'm not saying go look at it, but they did. It was getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, but it was a lot of fun and the student athletes loved it. And I took a lot of inspiration many years ago. The Briar Cliff president, I remember she was doing like the shaky leg on TikTok when it first started. So I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And so again, just having fun and being able to take those moments and laugh a little. The other piece in regards to diversity, equity, inclusion, what I think is so important, especially when the hard conversations, the crucial conversations have to happen. I have found if I've got several people that I can just call, and they're not necessarily in the athletic professional world, but I can say, okay, I'm going into this conversation. How do I approach this? And they will just shoot me straight. And it's, you need that. You need in all areas. So all the tough topics that there are, find somebody that you know will be honest, that they're not expecting anything in return. They're helping just move that conversation along. And it's important to have those. So I also wanted to point out with the NAI Rise, there are resources that are available, and there's a ton out there. And so maybe it's even just taking 10 minutes when you first get to the office and challenging yourself to go learn a little bit more in a specific area that you're not comfortable with. So you can start to broaden what you're learning specific to that topic would be my suggestion. Susan, anything else?
Yeah, I would add to that, Kristen, that I think it's important for us as leaders to create a positive, safe environment that we can talk about those uncomfortable situations, and that it's okay to have those conversations, but you have to create that environment where people feel like they're safe, right? So they're able to ask questions without being judged, or they're able to talk about marginalized groups without being judged by that. I think that's really important, to be able to create and provide that positive and safe environment that your staff feels comfortable, or your student athletes feel comfortable being able to talk about those uncomfortable topics that we need to talk about. I think that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add to that, sometimes too, it's, I was talking with our basketball teams the other day in regards to the Haskell video that came out, and wanting to help support the causes in which those student athletes find important to them. And we did have a Native American who could speak to her own experience, and but it's not always going to be safe, right? And so a lot of times too, they have to be brave. We all have to be brave in these conversations. And again, that's why if you can have some support, and if your athletic department can provide that support for the bravery that's got to happen, that's going to be really important as well. Okay, so getting to the end here, the low-hanging fruit, quick wins in regards to creating a positive culture. I think we have both found listening, right? Just being able to sit with our coaches, sit with our student athletes, and not have that agenda of what we think needs to be there, but finding out from them to help them drive the agenda. You know, what should be important to us in the positions that we are in. I also found providing autonomy, right? We're going to provide them the tools to be successful. And in using those tools, then they can go, they being coaches, student athletes, in creating that environment within their own program, that they have the autonomy in developing that success for them. Susan, anything else specific to that area?
Well, you know, I think, Kristen, we talked about listening as being so critical. I learned that my first probably 2 days on the job, 3 days, is people just want to be heard, right? They just want to be heard. Do I have all the answers? By no means do I. But I can sit and listen, and I can sit and say, I hear what you're saying, and I'll try to help as much as I can. But I don't always have to have the answers, and I don't always have the answers. But I do know that I can sit and listen, and it makes a huge difference. And when I say listen, I say that with intent. Like, I can say that I'm listening, but I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond to what they're saying. That's not really listening, right? If I'm really listening, I'm taking notes, I'm writing things down, I'm letting them go through whatever is their angst at the time, and then talking through that with them afterwards. So I would just really encourage you to make sure that you're listening, because, to be honest, all of us just want to be heard.
All right, Susan.
Yeah,
Bit of advice.
Sure. I got two things that I wrote down here, Kristen. One is, and you probably have heard this, but I'm a big believer in this: surround yourself with people who make you better. I just think that's so very, very important. And the other one that I've learned over the years, and you probably have heard this too, but it's not always about what you know, but it's about who you know, or even more importantly, sometimes who you know that knows somebody else. I'll just give you a quick example. I moved from Kansas. I was moving from Kansas to Boston. I did not know anybody in the Boston area. I applied at a school out there as an assistant AD. I did not know the athletic director, but I knew somebody in Kansas that knew an athletic director in Boston that knew the athletic director that I applied at the school that I was at. It's the only reason I got the interview. I ended up getting the job. Without that connection, I would have never even gotten an interview. So it's not always about what you know, but who you know, or who knows somebody that knows you. Those are my two nuggets.
Love it. So the three things I have here, we versus me. My husband's really been challenging me in when I talk about work, to not use just I, me, but it's our team. It's what we do, and really recognizing that words matter, and how I project and represent Park to across campus, to all those different areas, different constituents that we talked about, that it's really a we is who we have here. And so it seems like an easy correction, but it's hard. And so I've been really working on that. And then I did provide these two images. So we've got the F-150, that's an old beat up truck. And for us here at Park, what I love about this picture, I think it really describes our athletics program. And this is why I fit here, right? I fit in this culture because we work hard with very little. And that's what I grew up in. Here we're taking some donated equipment to a high school that really needed some more equipment. But yours may be a cattle, it could be a Tesla. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is who we are, and being a part of a culture that fits. It's going to be really important in getting you to work every day. And then the second picture, even though I've just said it's we versus me, and then I have this individual picture here, it seems different, but the idea behind this is really understanding and having a good grasp of who you are, and understanding, having a solid foundation, because when you go into the practices of your values, and recognizing that it's through adversity that your character really shows, sometimes you're going to feel like you're on an island, and you got to be comfortable with that. And again, that's surround yourself with those people who can't always be there with you, but you know you have them, and can help push you to build the culture that you want within the department. that you're in. Okay, I think that's what we have.
Anybody have any
Let's-
questions?
Yeah, let's open up for some questions before we turn it over to Justin. This was some great information. I was really excited to hear this presentation. This really energized me. I'm not even on a campus. I'm like, this is some good stuff. I want to be a mentor. Iris liked it.
Oh,
I will say if nobody has questions, that's fine. I would say though, if you do later on, feel free, please, to email me, call me. I'm more than happy. I've been talking to Kristen about this presentation for a couple of weeks now, and I still wrote down things from what she said that I just learned from us talking. So I'm always open to learning and visiting with other administrators. I, as I said before, never have all the answers by any means.
Also, one thing I just wanted to mention, we at the national office are trying to think of different ways that we can incorporate not only the RISE efforts, but things that we're doing with the senior woman leader at convention. So if you have other topics, not only just for this lunch and learn, but other ways of how we can learn from each other and what that would look like at convention, could also be great to hear your voice on what, you know, you'd like to see us incorporate. So just kind of keep that in mind. I also put that into the chat box. We're turning a lot of different scenarios into stories that we can share with others. Ted Breidenthal is the leader. He's on this call too of our resource subcommittee. And so we're always looking for things that we can share. So just know that that's an open door to send that on over to the national office. And we'd love to be able to share what's happening on your campus. Okay, with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Justin. Justin, okay, I was going to say I can either share my screen or you can share yours. You've got yours. Fantastic.
I don't know who's sharing that. Looks like Kristen's sharing
Oh,
this, which is
perfect,
great.
Kristen.
So
Great.
thank you, Kristen, for taking care of that for me. I greatly appreciate it because I wasn't prepared to share my screen anyway. So thank you. I first want to start by thanking Paige and you all for inviting me to be a part of this. Listening to both Kristen and Susan talk was definitely a pleasure for me. I took a page full of notes here, two sides of just some different things that I picked up from that. So it was very nice to hear some of the things that you all are doing. I think there's a lot of people that can learn from some of the things that were shared. I'll echo one thing that was stated throughout the previous presentation here was communication. Communication is key. And jobs that I've had prior to this, it was shared with me that communication is going to be the key to your success or your failure. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. Communication is also not just talking; it's also listening. Listening, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. So I think there's a lot of merit to those statements that can take a lot of us a long way in our careers, especially in the sports arena and athletic departments that you all are a part of. So the uncomfortable conversation, and I don't know why I got chose to pick this one, but as the director of officiating, I do see a lot of suspensions, ejections, appeals, protests, things of that nature. And it's been interesting. I've been here with the NAI now for just over 4 months. A little bit about my background. I too come from a Heart of America conference school. I was a baseball player back in the early 90s at Missouri Valley College. I started my football officiating career in the Heart of America conference. I was a trainer of football officials for 5 or 6 years with Danny Harris in the Heart of America conference before I came here. And so a lot of my heart and soul has been poured into the NAI, both as a player, a young adult, and now as I think a mature adult moving forward. But moving forward with that, I thought I would just put up a couple things. These are live links, so you have the presentation. These should take you to a couple of documents. We don't have to click them right now, but I carry these with me and pretty much everywhere I go, just because I'm going to get a question from a commissioner, an athletic director, a coach, somebody's going to call and ask about a suspension or what do we do? We had a player that was ejected. What now? I think in your roles as you continue to support the athletic program is understand first and foremost that the officiating team, and I'll piggyback on what Kristen said, we are officials and we consider ourselves a team. We are the third team on the field or on the court or on the pitch all too often. And I think it's natural for everyone to want to disagree with the decision that's made, and sometimes not calling a foul or throwing a flag is a decision. We're making decisions every single second of every contest that we're a part of, and some of those decisions are made off of experience. So you all are very well aware there's a shortage of officials that are kind of going across the country at all sports at all levels. We're going to see that at our level in the small college sports arena with the youth of the officiating staff, and they're going to make mistakes no differently than a starting freshman on the basketball team is not going to be as good as a fifth-year senior. And I think the coaches understand that when it's their players, but all too often do we forget that when it's the officiating staff that has a freshman college official on the court. So they're going to make mistakes. They're doing it in their best judgment. And your role, I think, as an administrative office is to kind of help the coaching staff and help the players that run into a situation where their actions are deemed worthy of an ejection. Okay. And helping them understand, is there a teachable moment that can come out of that with our, Champions of Character initiatives? Is there anything that we can do to help that player learn? And sometimes there is, and sometimes there's not. We fully understand that. But I think that the biggest part is understanding the difference between what is an ejection and then what is a suspension. And there's a document that the first link there is, it kind of talks through the FAQs with regards to that. And I would encourage everybody to kind of look at that, because I think if you can get yourself to understand the difference there, it will help you understand maybe some of the things that you can do to support them. But in a very simple version, an ejection is disqualification from the contest. Plain and simple. That's what it is. Your actions, whether it was profanity, whether it was a fight, whether it was a foul, or in a certain contest that requires suspension by sport rule, the ejection is disqualification from that contest. The suspension is something that by the NAI bylaws that we have developed, that is taking the actions that got you ejected from that game or caused you to be ejected from that contest. And then we want to make sure that it's a little more, punitive, if you will. It's the fine that you're going to pay. You're going to be suspended initial contest or 2 or 3, depending on what it was for. Many of the suspensions are outlined in the sports rule book, so they're not completely NAI bylaws. For sports that don't have a suspension aspect to them, that's where we get to the NAI bylaws. And then the suspension rubric, that's the second one, that's where we outline the suspensions that go along with the ejection. So it's I think both of those two documents in concert together should help most of you navigate the suspensions that result from an ejection that are sport rule. It's color coded. I kind of, so you probably look at me, but you can look at there too, but it's kind of color coded with different things that are in here. If it's blue, that's purely based right out of the sport rule book. If it's something that's in red, that's both the equivalent sport rule book as well as the NAI bylaws are in agreement. And then if it's in green, that's something that is 100% NAI bylaws are putting that suspension in place. What's appealable? What's protestable? It's a common question that I get almost every day, especially during the soccer season. Maybe that'll slow down as we're coming out of the soccer season, but currently there are only 3 by sport rule opportunities. Thank you for pulling it up, Kristen. This is the document. So there are only 3, and they're highlighted right there on that screen. 3 items that can be protested or challenged: player identification, illegal participation of an ejected player who shouldn't have been playing, or the new one that was added just this year was lessening an ejection for violent behavior 2 from a 2-game suspension and potentially considering it to be a 1-game suspension. So there are very defined things that can be protested. The majority of suspensions are not something that can be protested. There is an appeal process that can happen, and those are outlined in this document. They would come to our NAI Code of Ethics Committee, and they would review that and issue a verdict back on that as well. So basically, player performance, we would like to celebrate all of the positives and the accomplishments of our student athletes. And I think there's a lot to that. We understand that part of the game, there's going to be some negative aspects that unfortunately, happen. Some are controllable, some are not controllable, and they are what they are. So when they happen, I encourage you to be up to speed on them. If you ever have any questions whatsoever, my door is open. My email is very much out there, jgrag@nai.org. Feel free to, if you have a question on one of these items, I'm happy to try to help you
on a
understand
webinar, but nothing's
and
important.
go from there. So
I'm kind of on this
gave you a lot
webinar,
of
but
information.
like
Any questions?
we're wrapping up and nothing's important. They can't. Yeah. We're talking about. Yeah.
Any questions from anybody out there right now?
I know Tamasha had a question, and I think it might be to the first component with Susan and Kristen. So I just want to make sure that we recognize that she had her hand up, and I missed that one. Sorry.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Afternoon. My name is Tamasha Bowden. I'm the Assistant Athletic Director for Florida National University. And I did have a question for Ms. Susan Decker. And if anybody else can give some advice, I'm open to listen to that as well. But I have played collegiate basketball and I played professionally as well. So now being in a more administrative role, is there such a thing as overstepping your boundaries when giving advice or suggestions to how coaches approach a game? And if there is, where do you draw the line?
So are you asking, I just want to make sure I understand your question before I answer. Are you asking if a coach has asked you for advice?
I'm sorry, keep getting muted. Not necessarily, but as a previous athlete, I see certain things that could help improve the team's dynamic in their performance, but I don't want to overstep my boundaries.
Yeah.
Or be too overbearing.
Yeah. That's a good question. So being a former coach at the same university that I coached at, it is a fine line. I came back here when, as an associate AD, when the gentleman that replaced me was the coach, and I tried to stay like out of it as much as I could, because I didn't want him to feel like I was invading his space or trying to put my fingerprint on his program. That was not me. That's still not me. The new coach that we've hired is somebody that I respect and have known for quite a while. And so this is just my personal opinion, and anybody else can weigh in if they'd like. I hire somebody to do the job that I feel like that they can do. They may be running their program differently than what I would want it to be run, but it's not my program. If unless they're doing something that's crazy, that it's not good for the student athletes, then I would say something. But for me personally, I am entrusting that we've hired the right coaches to run the programs as they see fit, that they can be competitive and win and treat their student athletes the way that they should be treated.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Anybody else, please feel free to jump in if you have other experience with that or a different opinion, obviously.
Iris Dixon, and I'm at Missouri Baptist University, and kind of a situation, not a situation, but I did coach at the institution that I am now at, an associate AD, and the coach who is now the head coach actually was my assistant. So we do kind of have that relationship. And so it's not, I don't, intervene or anything like that or overstep any boundaries. But most times we do have, conversations, I'll inquire how things are going, things like that. And we'll talk in a manner that, hey, we used to talk from, head coach, assistant coach, or coaches in general, and just kind of get, thoughts and ideas. And it may come up, well, what about, this or that? And it's more of, how you approach a conversation if you think that that may be the case, or if you have, thoughts and ideas. But it also depends on that relationship as well. Now basically I don't tell him, he coached under me. He does things a little bit different. I don't tell him how to do things. But we do have that relationship where we will pass ideas off of each other, and he will give me his thoughts on this or that, and tell me and ask me what I think. So it's all about, having that relationship and being able to approach things in a professional and appropriate manner, that's not overstepping or saying, hey, you need to do this way, or you need to do that, or you should do it, what in whatever manner. So I think it's all about that relationship that you have and being able to have those conversations.
Thank you, everyone. I know Justin had one more thing to share, and then I know we're out of time. So I want to give him one last moment. We will have this as a recording. We'll send out a recording to everybody. You can share with others. Also encourage others to join. I just feel like we are really learning from each other and sharing some really great knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. The last thing I was going to say, and it kind of goes along with the last question that was just asked as far as your engagement with your coaches. Many of your coaches are going to come to you and ask for your assistance in handling an ejection suspension type situation. I would encourage you to first reach out to your conference commissioners. Make sure you understand the dynamics of what their expectations may not be, as things may need to be escalated, because they are heavily involved in the process that related to suspensions that are in place. They may or may not want you to reach out to the sports coordinator. So the sport coordinator for your football officials, if there's an ejection there, or if there's a situation or a question, they may want you to come through them. They may want you to go to them directly, to the sports coordinator. A lot of that has to do, I think, with the experience level, how involved they want to be or don't want to be in certain situations, maybe the sport, their understanding of that sport versus another sport. So just encourage you to continue to develop those relationships with your conference commissioners, as well as the sport coordinators of the officiating staff, to understand how that relationship and those dynamics may need to happen. And your conference may be different than someone else's. And that's all I had. So thank you all for your time for that. And if you have questions about ejection suspensions, let me know.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing, everyone. This is really great.
Thank you.
Good job, Kristen, Susan, Justin. Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.